Which position groups need to take the biggest step forward for the Panthers in 2024, and which groups are most likely to improve? We'll talk about that right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where next Friday on the 26th, the weekly Friday mailbag is back for the rest of the offseason. Either at me or DM me to get those weekly Friday mailbag questions into me right now. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs are now over, the sports stop sportsing like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get started today. So spent the last month and a half looking at every single position group here in Carolina. We talked about the state of the Panthers offense, state of the Panthers defense. On yesterday's show, want to spend one more day looking at the position groups, talking about the ones that are the strongest, the weakest, and really focusing on which groups need to take a step forward. We know what groups we think should be the strongest this year, and this year who we think is going to be the weakest. But let's look at the ones that are going to take a step forward potentially, or at least really need to take a step forward this season, and then look at groups that are most likely to take that big step forward in 2024 for this team to not be the worst team in the NFL like they were last year. Focusing in on three position groups I feel like need to take a major step forward in 2024. And I'm a simple man. This game comes down to whether you can win in the trenches and whether you have a quarterback. So the three position groups I'm looking at are the two ones at the line of scrimmage and the quarterback here in Carolina. Starting off with the offensive line. It was a complete train wreck last season and really was never able to get off the runway, considering that Austin Corbett was not available to start the first 6 weeks in the season because of the physically unable to perform list. And also they lost Brady Christensen week 1 against Atlanta. That thrust Chandler Zavala and Calvin Throckmorton, who they picked off of waivers after the cutdown day, into the starting lineup. And things did not go well, as we saw throughout the season. 7 different left guards, 8 different right guards. Eventually, I will stop bringing that up once it's no longer relevant to this discussion, which right now it is, because the season has not started and we're still evaluating the roster heading into training camp, which 1 week from today, y'all, is starting right up here in Uptown Charlotte. For the first time ever in Panthers history, they'll be having training camp in Charlotte. It's a complete train wreck because of the injuries. And I believe that had Icky been around all year with Brady Christensen there at left guard and with Bradley Bozeman at center, and then with Austin Corbett at right guard and Taylor Moton at right tackle, this unit would have been much better than they were last year, but they did not have continuity. You saw Bradley Bozeman struggle at center, having 2 different guys next to him all year long. You saw Ike Ekwonu struggle in his sophomore season in the NFL with a different guy next to him all year long. Taylor Moton, he did his thing, but the offensive line was a train wreck and was not nearly as good as I projected it to be. And probably many of us also out there felt like it was going to be, based off of what we saw in that 2022 season at the end when Steve Wilkes took over and they went to a downhill rushing attack. Instead, last year, it was square peg, round hole, something that Bradley Bozeman brought up that didn't really fit the scheme. And you wonder, why the hell was Frank Reich and Thomas Brown running a scheme that did not fit the offensive alignment they had? That's the reason why they're no longer here in Carolina. But enter Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis, 2 guys who've been starters at guard there in Miami. Robert Hunt was, and Damian Lewis in Seattle, where the assistant offensive line coach here in Carolina was the last couple of seasons. Both those guys getting big time money to come in and to start immediately. Austin Corbett moving into center. And then you have Yosh Nijman, who was a swing tackle and also started a couple games the last couple seasons in Green Bay. He now comes over as our primary swing tackle here in Carolina, something the Panthers didn't really have last year. So that should lead them to be improved. And you can't win if they can't run the ball and they can't keep Bryce Young off of his ass all season long. This is a group that obviously has to take a step forward. They cannot give up 65 sacks again. Not every single one of those sacks were on the offensive line with the Panthers quarterbacks, whether it be Bryce or whether it be Andy Dalton or anybody else, depending on how things go health-wise and, of course, production-wise. Fingers crossed everything goes great for Bryce Young, obviously. They cannot have 65 sacks again this season. This is a group that must clearly, obviously, take a step forward in 2024. Let's go to the other side of the line of scrimmage, defensive line, which outside of Derek Brown last year was honestly not good. And you could even say terrible. Deshaun Williams was not good for them. Shai Tuttle, who's still here, mainly because of the structure of his contract. Thank you, Samir Suleiman and Scott Fitter. Really, that's what Shai Tuttle should be saying every day. He should be thanking them that he's still here in Carolina playing for his hometown team, as he was bad last year. A'Shawn Robinson, he's now in replacing Deshaun Williams. He should be an upgrade there in the interior defensive line as a noted run stopper, but he's also someone who's been a journeyman throughout his career in the NFL, having spent time in Detroit and in Los Angeles, where he has the ties to Ejiro Evero, which is a big reason why he's obviously here now in Carolina. He, though, is still kind of more of a rotational player, maybe not someone that you're going to rely on all the time to be great for you. And now you're going to, depending on, of course, the situations, first, second down, probably want him out there. Third down, do you want him in there? When it comes to passing plays, probably not, but still should be an upgrade. What they had last year, he's a younger player by a couple of years. He's been a better player, honestly, and a consistent player in the NFL as a former second-round pick out of Alabama. So I expect him to play better. And Shai Tuttle just cannot play the way he played for you last year. The Panthers want to be better on the defensive line. You have guys like Nick Thurman, LeBrian Ray. They brought in Jaden Crumedy in the 6th round at Mississippi State, who are also going to get opportunities on this defensive line, provided that they make the team, of course. That should help elevate it. But this is side of the ball that low-key we did not talk enough about last year. Talked about it yesterday when breaking down the defense. 31st in run defensive EPA last season. Unacceptable. They were terrible against the run for the majority of the season, especially the beginning of the season. Then later on, got better with Aaron Jones, and the Packers ran all over them. You cannot win games if you cannot get off the field, and you cannot stop a team from running, and that is something the Panthers must do this year. Derek Brown, not worried about him. The rest of them need to see it first before I can truly believe that that's an area of the roster that will be improved. But they must take a step forward. You got to win at the line of scrimmage if you're going to win in the game of football, whether it's Pop Warner, whether it is high school, middle school, college, and of course the NFL. You cannot win if you cannot win up front. You can also not win at this level, at a high level, unless you have a quarterback. And the Panthers are sitting here, unfortunately, after one season of Bryce Young starting without the knowledge of whether he is the guy. David Tepper said on draft night when the Panthers took Bryce Young back in 2023 that he gave them the best opportunity of all the quarterbacks available in that 2023 draft class to win not a Super Bowl, but to win Super Bowls. After 1 year, it looks like CJ Stroud is that guy that David Tepper was talking about. Will he ever do it in Houston? That is to be determined, knowing that Patrick Mahomes plays in the AFC, so he might not have a great chance of doing it anyways. But still, he clearly was the better player than Bryce Young last year. Now, CJ's come out publicly, and he's talked about that Bryce situation in Carolina, as we've discussed constantly on this show, as this is a Carolina Panthers podcast. We're going to continuously talk about how everything was jacked up for Bryce Young and how he could potentially get better this season with a hopefully better circumstance with new receivers, which we'll get to later, and a new head coach in Dave Canales. But CJ's brought up that the situation wasn't great. And we have talked about the hypothetical of what happens if CJ Stroud comes to Carolina. Would things have been just as bad last year? I'm of the belief that, yes, things would have been just as bad. Would CJ have played better than Bryce? I'm thinking that probably would have played better than Bryce just based on what we saw last year. But the world will never know. But seriously, you got to be better at quarterback if you want to have a chance to win, and we'll see. Stroud played well last year. Did not get to see Anthony Richardson, Will Levis. If you look at a lot of the numbers, didn't really play well, but the Titans are going all in on him, at least for this upcoming season, with the new head coach and Brian Callahan coming over from Cincinnati. The Panthers are still all in on Bryce Young as long as David Tepper is all in on Bryce Young. How do I know that to be the case? Well, David Tepper fired Frank Reich after 11 games for Bryce Young. Bryce was not developing the way that they expected and wanted, so Frank Reich was out the door. He fired Scott Fitter because of the terrible roster that he put around Bryce Young as a rookie, and then hired Dan Morgan, who he felt like was better equipped, and also the lack of options to build a better roster for Bryce heading into year two. He brought in Dave Canales, who did wonders with Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield for the last 2 seasons to help get Bryce Young to where David Tepper expects him to be. They added all of the offensive pieces on the offensive line, which we just talked about, and at receiver, running back, and tight end for Bryce Young. Now Bryce Young needs to take advantage of the situation that he's been placed in this year. I don't know if we can say no excuses, but I feel like the excuses should be less heading into this year than they were last year. I had serious concerns about the wide receiver group last season. I still have certain questions about the group, but I'm not going to be as concerned as I was a year ago. He has a better situation, in my opinion, than the one he walked into last season. But we'll only find out as the season goes along and once the season is written and done with, and we'll really know whether this was a better situation or not for Bryce. But either way, Bryce Young, the quarterback spot, has to improve for the Panthers to not be 2-15 again in 2024. Same with defensive line, same with offensive line. It really is that simple. You got to win up front, and you have to win with your quarterback playing at a high level, at least at a competent, above average NFL level this season in Carolina. So those are the position groups that I feel like must take a step forward. What are the position groups I think will take a step forward in 2024? I'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But with the playoffs over in the NBA and NHL and the Copa America and European Championships also no longer going on, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. We talked about the position groups that must take a step forward in 2024. It starts at the line of scrimmage on the offensive line and defensive line. Then it ends with Bryce Young. Once again, 2024 is going to be about Bryce Young and his development. The wins and losses, not nearly as important. Yes, there's a reason we play the games to figure out whether the team can win or lose, and you want to see wins. That matters. But what really matters is the Panthers' significant financial investment in Bryce Young gets developed properly and gets a chance to show his talent, which I think he's better set to do this year after what happened last year and all of the offseason moves. So those are position groups that must take a step forward. What are the position groups that I think will take a step forward in 2024? I honestly do believe that offensive line will be better, even though I'm not going to talk about them with the next 3 position groups. I do think that Bryce Young's actually going to play better in 2024. Defensive line, I don't know. Not super confident about the defense overall, which you probably would have heard or watched yesterday when talking about the state of the Carolina Panthers defense under Ejiro Evero in year 2 as him being the defensive coordinator in Carolina. But talking about 3 position groups I think will take a step forward in 2024, or at least should take a step forward in 2024. Let's start off with wide receiver. The Carolina Panthers were bereft of talent at the wide receiver position last year. Y'all told me that Laviska Shenault was that dude, and he was not. Also was injured. That did not help, but still not that guy. Terrace Marshall, Frank Reich literally forgot he existed after he had a career day against Detroit and did not play the next week against Miami. How on earth does that happen? I don't know. But there's a reason why Frank Reich is no longer here. We've seen what TMJ is, and we'll see next week and the next coming weeks whether he can be different than what we've seen so far in his first 3 years in Carolina. But this was not a great wide receiver group. Adam Thielen had a spectacular year considering the expectations that were placed upon him at age 33 and that he was the only one who could get open and catch the football for Bryce Young. Jonathan Mingo had a forgettable rookie season, a second-round pick out of Ole Miss, and DJ Chark was just not good for Carolina all season long. Had a couple of plays in the wins that they had against the Falcons and even played well against Green Bay. But in totality, you're not going to miss DJ Chark at all. And he's right to not be here in Carolina. But looking at the additions that they made this offseason, if you really just swap DJ Chark out for Deontay Johnson, then you can see the Panthers should absolutely be improved. Deontay Johnson, like DJ Chark, a one-time Pro Bowler. He's also been an All-Pro as a returner, which I don't expect him to do at all this season. He could, if the Panthers needed him in a pinch or in a big situation in a game, they could have him return kicks. I doubt that is going to happen as teams are overly cautious with their players returning kicks, especially the best players on the roster. But Deontay Johnson is an excellent route runner, gets separation, can catch it, can get downfield, something that DJ Chark just could not do for the Panthers last year. So just looking at that, you have an upgrade right there. And you're looking at the rookie receiver this season compared to the rookie receiver last season. Xavier Legette had an outstanding season at South Carolina. Didn't do anything for his first 4 years there in Columbia, but last year broke out against North Carolina and then continued that all season long as he became the number one guy with Juice Wells out for the majority of the season there for the Gamecocks. Legette comes in and he takes over what I think would be the wide receiver 3 position that Mingo held last year heading into the season. With Johnson coming in, Legette, who I still don't know what my expectations are for him, wide receiver wise, I think special teams wise, I think he should be a difference maker in the kickoff return game as the rules have changed. They're going to allow more returns this upcoming season in the NFL. I absolutely think that he's going to be a plus for the Panthers there. I just don't know. For someone who didn't do a lot in college, understanding losing his parents, the injuries, the bad quarterback play, the different coordinators, different coaches, and all that went into his 5-year stay there in Columbia, the hottest place on planet Earth. I still need to just be cautious here. I want to see him come in, play. He had the hamstring, so he's got to be healthy, of course. I just want to give him some time. I'm not trying to place too many expectations on him, but when you're a first-round pick, the Panthers traded up to get that fifth-year option. There are going to be expectations placed upon you, especially with a new coaching staff. But I do think wide receiver should be improved and will be improved. Tight end. This has been arguably the worst position group in Carolina over the last 4 years. Offensive line has been bad. Quarterback has been bad. I don't think any areas on the team have been nearly as bad as those 3 position groups have been over the last 4 or 5 years here in Carolina, in large part for those other position groups because of injuries. Offensive line banged up in 2021, banged up last year, bad O-line. Quarterback just hasn't been good for guys that were former top 3 picks that have stepped in here at quarterback in Carolina the last couple of years. Tight end, not really a lot of excuses other than the talent hasn't developed and hasn't really shown to be all that talented whatsoever. Ian Thomas, we know who he is at this point in time in his career, more of a blocking tight end than anything. I just don't think it's going to happen for him. But the Panthers do bring back Tommy Trimble. And I'm not a part of Trimble Hive. I know Trimble Hive is out there, and they believe that their boy is going to step up and be that guy as a tight end one for Carolina. I don't think that's going to be the case. I still do think he is their best all-around tight end when you think about receiving game, blocking, and everything that's going to be asked of the tight ends here in Carolina this upcoming season. I still think that he is that. But as far as like in the receiving game, Jatavion Sanders, who they just drafted out of Texas, is going to be, I think, notably better than Tommy Trimble this season and moving forward, which is why I think the group should be improved to have a true receiving tight end who may be more of just a receiver than an actual tight end right now, but he's going to develop that trait moving forward under Pat McPherson as the tight end coach here in Carolina. But I think Trimble's going to have a solid year. I'm not expecting him to put up big numbers in the receiving game, but I do think that he can help them out as that tight end 2 option. There's other options the Panthers are going to go to at wide receiver, at running back, and even at tight end before they even go to Trimble, who did show some promise at the end of last season. The numbers aren't eye-popping, but none of the tight end numbers have been eye-popping since Greg Olsen left following the 2019 season here in Carolina. I do think that with Trimble and with Sanders and hell, even Ian Thomas coming back and Stephon Sullivan, who showed a little bit of glimpses and has a Seattle staff that knows him, that this is a group that should and will be improved. Now, will it be a top half of the NFL tight end group? No. But it should be better than what we've seen the last couple of years. I think finally, combined, these guys will have more receptions and more yards and more touchdowns than the last time we saw Greg Olsen here in Carolina in 2019. And that, my friends, is improvement. Running back, finally, this is a group I also think that should and will be improved, and in large part because Dave Canales has said he is going to be stubborn about running the football. We'll see whether that's true or not. Last year, it seemed like the team was stubborn about throwing the football and never running. But this year, they want to run the ball, and they have the offensive line, in my opinion, that is going to allow them to run the football. And they also have the running backs who are going to have success on the ground. Chuba Hubbard, rightfully so, has earned the spot as RB1, and he will be that when the season begins. But at some point in time, whenever Jonathan Brooks, the second-round pick that they traded back up earlier into the second round to take, he's going to play a significant role once he's healthy with that ACL. We're getting close. On Friday is when he and the rest of the rookie class will report. On the 23rd is when the veterans will, and then the 24th is when practice starts. We're going to find out next week the health status for guys like Jonathan Brooks and DJ Wonnum and a lot of others that we're concerned about heading to training camp. We'll find out where he's at. If he is full go, do not be surprised if early on he takes over as that 1B, maybe in the 1A. But I believe that him and Chuba are going to tote the rock, and the Panthers are going to be in a fine position to run the football this season. And Miles Sanders looked cooked last year, but he was never healthy. If we want to give him some grace, let's go back to training camp where he had the groin injury, didn't play in the preseason. Not like I need my running backs to play in the preseason anyways, but he didn't play in the preseason. And once week 1 rolled around, he didn't play well. Fumbled the ball with one of the 3 turnovers that day against Atlanta, and just was not the guy that we'd seen the year prior. And it's possible that because he was banged up last season and didn't play as many snaps as he would have played had he been healthy and played at the level of the contract that he was given, maybe he comes back fresher this season. And he certainly is someone who says he wants to stay in Carolina as long as the contract, as long as he's under contract, and as long, of course, the team will have him. And, of course, because he wants his money and all that. But still, I don't think he can be nearly as bad as he was last year. This is a team that wants to run the ball as much as they say they want to run the ball. Expect Chuba, expect Jonathan, and even expect Miles Sanders to get plenty of carries this season and for this group to be improved. So they should, and I think they will be improved this upcoming season. So running back, tight end, wide receiver, all 3 of those on offense should be improved. You would hope so after all of the capital and time and effort the Panthers scouting staff, front office staff put in to fixing the offense and putting better players around Bryce Young here in 2024. Brandon Aiyuk wants out of San Francisco. And anytime something like this happens, someone asks me, hey, Julian, will the Panthers go out and get this player? Should they get him? So we'll talk about that. Should the Panthers be interested in Brandon Aiyuk? And does it make sense for Carolina to dole out a first-round pick plus a ton of cash for the all-pro receiver? Talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that your small business are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. In fact, 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Without fail, every single time a notable player becomes open for a trade, they request a trade or are available free agency-wise, someone DMs me asking, hey, Julian, should the Panthers go after this player? And that happened again on Tuesday as Brandon Aiyuk, the San Francisco 49ers, I almost slipped, the San Francisco 49ers all-pro wide receiver, asked for a trade. He's wanted a new contract. The 49ers have not done that. He is playing, I believe, on the 5th-year option this upcoming season, or he may have it next year. Either way, it's under contract in San Francisco. The 49ers do not have to trade him at all. He did not get a new deal done prior to training camp, at least yet, and he is unhappy and he wants out of San Francisco. So someone asked me via my DMs, hey, Julian, are the Panthers going to make this move? Should they make the move at all? And I went out on Twitter and said, yes, the Panthers obviously should be interested in Brandon Aiyuk. Why? Because they have the worst wide receiver room in the NFL last year. Also, Adam Thielen is 34 years old. This could be his last year in Carolina. Also, Deontay Johnson, while he's coming in to be wide receiver 1 and play the X role, could be gone after the season in Carolina. Jonathan Mingo, didn't see a lot that makes me think he's going to be very good here. And Xavier Legette, we don't know yet. So there's still a lot of question marks about the wide receiver room, which I do still believe should be and will be improved this upcoming season with the new additions that they made. And I guess some more experience with some of the guys that coming back from last year. So that in itself should lead Dan Morgan and the organization to be interested in acquiring Brandon Aiyuk. But does it really make sense for Carolina to do that? I don't know. According to all the reports, it's going to take a first-round pick. And typically, we've seen that guys like Brian Burns go for a first-round pick, and circumstances are different. We saw that L'Jarius Sneed go for a first-round pick, and circumstances, of course, were different. There is time to negotiate. But if you're going to negotiate for a player like Brandon Aiyuk, you're going to have to give up a first-round pick, and then you're also going to have to pay him big-time money. Justin Jefferson just got a 4-year, $140 million contract. That's $35 million per year. The Carolina Panthers balked at giving Brian Burns $30 million per year. And he had come in here, he had done everything right, was great in community, was a leader on the team, and produced on the field. Maybe not at the level we all expected last year, but he produced on the field and was always healthy and available, something you cannot say for a lot of the guys on defense, not named Eric Brown, who are core players here in Carolina. So they decided they didn't want to do that, just would find it interesting that 3 months later, they would decide that let's go give up a first-round pick and a ton of money to Brandon Aiyuk after we turned down multiple first-round picks for Brian Burns and did not pay him a ton of money like Brandon Aiyuk is wanting and what you would have to pay him if you bring him here to Carolina. So I don't really see it happening. The Niners are going to tell him just, okay, cool. We'll see you at camp next week. And then we'll see whether it materializes into anything. They did take Ricky Pearsall out of Florida in the first round this year, which raised an eyebrow or two, making you wonder, what's the future for Brandon Aiyuk and even Deebo Samuel moving forward and with that wide receiver position? Not super concerned about it because Kyle Shanahan's going to scheme those guys open. And Kyle Shanahan also was a wide receiver and is a hell of a play caller and offensive coach. So they're going to probably be fine with or without Aiyuk. The Panthers would be improved with him, obviously. I don't think it necessarily changes the calculus that much of what their season will be because I don't think the defense is going to be very good. And there's still a ton of questions about Bryce Young. But if you did acquire him and you also were able to still have Johnson and Thielen around, that kind of gets close to the no excuses portion of the season for Bryce Young in his evaluation, whether he really is the guy. I just have a hard time seeing Aiyuk wanting to come to the worst team in the NFL if he is available. Like if you're getting traded, you want to get paid, of course, but you don't want to go somewhere where you're going to play for a bad team. The Commanders are a team that people have mentioned that would make sense because of Adam Peters. Spent a lot of time in San Francisco. Now he's over there, and it's not like Washington's very good, but they do already have Terry McLaurin. They brought in Jaden Daniels, second overall. It would make sense for them, for their young quarterback, to get a player like Aiyuk. I saw Pittsburgh was a team that would make sense for them for potentially trading for Aiyuk. We'll see. If this was March, yeah, go all in. It's July. I feel like they're pretty comfortable with what they have. At least they want to find out what they have over the next couple of weeks. And I don't know if this is something that is going to resolve itself this weekend or even next weekend. So we will see how it all plays out. I wouldn't expect Carolina to be players. I think they should be interested because, why wouldn't you not be interested for an all-pro wide receiver, especially knowing that your wide receiver group still has a lot of question marks? I don't know if they can. Do you want to give up another top 5 pick potentially? We just saw them give number one overall pick last year. Now, if Aiyuk comes in and he's a stud, will it matter? Maybe, maybe not. Because that pick could maybe not be a top 5 pick. I don't know. I just don't. I don't really see it coming to fruition, and I don't know if it's necessarily the best decision that Carolina could make right now. Player, obviously getting him. but the compensation and then what you got to give him, that is another layer that people sometimes just don't think about when asking, hey, should they go get Brandon Aiyuk? Yes, they should, but also, should they? All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe, follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where I will be back next Friday, answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me to get those questions into me for that show. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always, and forever keep pounding in. I'll be back tomorrow talking to you on Thursday.